I remember the sound of rain that morning. It hit the kitchen window like 1,000 little reminders that some things can't be washed clean, no matter how hard you try. My phone buzzed on the counter, face down, vibrating against the wood like it was impatient to ruin my day. I didn't pick it up right away. I had learned that bad news doesn't vanish just because you pretend not to see it. When I finally turned it over, the text came from my sister, Lacey. "Hey, we've been thinking, maybe it's better if you don't come to the wedding." I stared at it for a long time, the words swimming. My little sister, the one I practically raised after Mom passed, was uninviting me from her wedding. No explanation, no phone call, just that. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table I'd once helped her decorate for her 16th birthday, and all I could think was, why? We hadn't fought, not really. Maybe a little tension since she started dating Jared, her fiancé, but nothing serious. I had even offered them my venue, my pride and joy, the event barn I'd spent 5 years restoring after my divorce. I built that place from ashes, literally and emotionally. I called her. She didn't pick up. I tried again, straight to voicemail. When she finally texted back, she said, "It's just Jared's family feels uncomfortable, with everything." Everything. That word felt like a slap. Everything meant my divorce. Everything meant my past. Jared came from one of those picture-perfect families who post Bible verses on Facebook but never miss a chance to whisper about someone else's failures. And apparently, I was still the town's favorite scandal. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, I went to the barn. The rain followed me there, softening the gravel road, turning everything gray and quiet. Inside, the twinkle lights I'd hung for their wedding still draped across the beams, casting a golden haze that should have felt warm, but didn't. I ran my fingers along the wooden tables we'd built, remembering how excited Lacey had been to have her big day here. She'd called it magical. I'd called it redemption. It was supposed to be my way of giving her something beautiful I never got to have. And now, I was uninvited from the very day I'd poured my heart into. That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders, watching lightning stitch its way across the sky. My neighbor, Mr. Grant, walked over with his old yellow lab, Daisy. He'd been like a father figure since mine left when I was 12. "You look like you lost something important," he said, sitting beside me. "I guess I did," I whispered. "My sister." He didn't press for details, just nodded slowly. "Sometimes the people we love need to lose us for a while to realize what they had." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But as the days passed, I kept getting updates from everyone else. The florist, the caterer, the photographer, each telling me how beautiful the wedding plans were coming along. I'd already signed most of the contracts, paid the deposits. It was my venue, my connections, my sweat in those walls. And yet, somehow, I was the outsider. A week before the wedding, I got a letter in the mail. Not from Lacey, from Jared's mother. It was polite, in that clipped Christian kind of way that pretends kindness, but bleeds condescension. She thanked me for my generosity, but said they'd decided to move the event to another venue, a place more suitable for the family's comfort, she wrote. "We trust you'll understand." Understand that they'd taken my kindness, my venue, and my sister's loyalty and turned it all against me? I dropped the letter on the counter and laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that surprised even me. Maybe it was easier to laugh than to cry. 2 days later, I got a call from the owner of a nearby vineyard. "Hey, Emma." "Hey, Emma," he said, his voice uneasy. "I just wanted to confirm the transfer for the Barnwood Estate wedding. Lacey and Jared's date." "Transfer?" I repeated, gripping the phone tighter. "Yeah, Jared's mom said you were moving it to us. We just need your signature to finalize the change." My heart dropped into my stomach. "That's not my booking to transfer," I said flatly. "And they don't have my permission. He hesitated. Oh, I see. Sorry, I just assumed. It's fine. I cut him off. Thanks for letting me know. I hung up before my voice could crack. Then I stood there in the quiet, my reflection glaring back at me from the dark kitchen window. I'd been erased from my sister's wedding like I was a stain they couldn't scrub out fast enough. That night, I went to the barn one last time. The smell of pine and dust hung heavy in the air. The fairy lights glowed faintly, the same ones I'd strung up for her engagement party months ago. I thought about all the Saturdays Lacey had spent here helping me paint the rafters, how we'd laughed when we got more whitewash on our jeans than the walls. She used to call me her hero. Now, I wasn't even worthy of being in the same room. I stood in the middle of the floor and whispered, God, I don't understand. Why does it hurt so much to do the right thing? And then, almost like an answer, something inside me stilled. A quiet reminder that grace doesn't always mean staying silent. Sometimes it means setting something free. So I canceled the booking. I locked the barn doors, and for the first time in a long time, I chose myself. The fallout came fast. Lacey showed up that evening, headlights cutting through the mist, her face streaked with tears as she got out of the car. She didn't even knock, just pushed through the front door like she used to when she lived here. Emma, how could you? She cried. The wedding is next weekend. I set my mug down carefully, hands trembling despite my calm voice. I canceled it because you canceled me, Lacey. That's not fair. Fair? I said, standing. You uninvited me from your wedding, then your fiancé's family tried to take my venue like it was theirs to trade around. Tell me what's fair about that. She pressed her lips together, chest heaving. I didn't know they'd do that. But you didn't stop them, either, I said softly. Her eyes filled again. I just wanted peace, Em. Jared's mom, she doesn't like drama. I laughed bitterly. You think this isn't drama? You think letting people walk all over you in the name of peace is kindness? It's not. It's cowardice. The words came out sharper than I meant to, but maybe they needed to. Maybe she needed to hear them. Lacey's shoulders slumped. You sound just like Mom, she whispered. That silenced me. Mom. The woman who'd taught us about love and boundaries, about forgiveness that cost something real. The one whose funeral I paid for while Lacey was still finishing high school. I'd held our family together with duct tape and prayers. And now, standing there in that kitchen, I realized I was tired of being everyone's safety net. Lacey turned to go, pausing in the doorway. You'll regret this, she said. One day, when you're alone. Maybe, I murmured, but at least I'll be honest. She left, slamming the door behind her. The sound echoed through the empty house like thunder. The wedding was held at the vineyard the next weekend. I didn't go, of course. I told myself I didn't care, but that was a lie. Every part of me wanted to drive by, to see her in the dress we picked out together, to know if she looked happy. But I couldn't bear the idea of standing on the outside again, of watching her choose them over me. Instead, I stayed home. I baked bread I didn't eat. I cleaned floors that were already spotless. I poured myself into busy work because silence had teeth. It wasn't until later that night when Mr. Grant stopped by with Daisy again that I finally let myself unravel. He handed me a small bundle of mail and said gently, "Heard about the wedding? You holding up?" I gave a half smile. Define holding up. He chuckled softly, then leaned against the porch railing. You know, sometimes when people push us away, it's because they see something in us they wish they had. I frowned. Strength? Conviction, he said. You didn't lose her, Emma. Not really. She just has to learn the hard way what grace looks like. I wanted to believe him, but it was hard. Sitting there under a moon that refused to shine, feeling like the villain in a story I'd started with love. The next morning, I drove out to the barn. The air smelled of wet hay and fallen leaves. A few petals still clung to the floorboards from when I'd been testing arrangements for the wedding. I knelt to pick up one, a white rose petal, brittle and pale now, and for some reason, that's when I started crying. Ugly, uncontrollable sobs that came from the deepest part of me. It wasn't just about Lacey. It was about everything I'd lost trying to prove I was still worthy of love. The marriage that failed, the gossip that followed, the years of pretending I was fine. And somewhere in the middle of those tears, I realized something. I didn't need to keep fighting for people who couldn't see my heart. Maybe this barn was just my redemption. Maybe it was my resurrection. That thought brought a strange calm. For the first time in months, I exhaled fully. The ache didn't vanish, but it shifted, becoming something lighter, something almost like hope. When I left, I locked the barn again, but this time I whispered a promise. If this place was meant for good, then let good still come from it. I didn't know how, but deep down, I believed it would. A few weeks passed after the wedding. I hadn't spoken to Lacey. Not once. I told myself I was done reaching out first, done apologizing for things I didn't do. But when you've loved someone their whole life, silence can feel heavier than any argument. The barn sat quiet, like it was holding its breath with me. I couldn't bring myself to rent it out again. Every time I walked inside, it smelled like memories. Roses, champagne, betrayal. Still, I went there every morning with my coffee, sat on the back steps, and watched the sun climb over the fields. It became my sanctuary again, but lonelier somehow. Then, one afternoon, as autumn bled into winter, a car pulled up the drive. I almost didn't recognize it at first. Lacey's silver Honda, covered in dust. She stepped out slowly, wrapped in a tan coat, her eyes red-rimmed. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the last few weeks had worn her down. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Didn't expect to see you." She looked around the barn, taking in the new floral arrangements I'd been testing for an upcoming community event. "It's still beautiful," she said, "even after everything." "Yeah," I said, sipping my coffee. "It holds up." We stood there for a moment, the silence thick between us, until she finally broke it. "I came to apologize." I didn't move, didn't speak, just let her words hang there, fragile and trembling. "I thought I was doing the right thing. Jared's mom said it would be simpler if we kept the guest list small. She said it wasn't about you, but I knew it was. I was scared of rocking the boat, so I just went along with it. And now? Now I see I lost more than I gained," she said, her voice cracking. "The wedding was beautiful, sure, but it felt wrong, empty, like I was smiling in pictures that didn't tell the truth." Her words hit hard. I wanted to forgive her right there, but part of me was still bleeding. "You hurt me, Lacey. Not just by uninviting me. You let them treat me like I was tainted. I know. And I'm so sorry." She started crying then. Real, ugly tears that made her shoulders shake. And something in me softened, because for all her mistakes, she was still that little girl I used to braid hair for before school. The one who'd crawl into my bed after thunderstorms and whisper, "Don't leave me." I walked over and pulled her into a hug. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was real. After a long moment, she stepped back. "Jared and we're not doing great," she admitted. "His mom doesn't talk to me now. She says I embarrassed the family by reaching out to you." I raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like a blessing in disguise." That made her laugh through her tears. "You might be right." We sat on the barn steps, the way we used to with kids, kicking at the gravel. The air was crisp, the sun low. She told me about the wedding day, how the power went out right before the ceremony, how the flowers arrived wilted, how the photos came back a little off. It was like the universe was trying to tell me something. Maybe it was. Maybe it's never too late to listen. She looked at me then, eyes full of something I hadn't seen in years, humility. "Do you think we can start over?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, but not by pretending none of this happened. We'll start from the truth this time." She smiled, small and trembling. "I'd like that." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her visit, every word, every tear. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel angry, just released, like the bitterness had finally run its course. The next morning, I called the local foster care coordinator. It was something I'd been thinking about quietly for months, using the barn for something more than weddings. I told her, "I have a space. It's warm, big, and full of light. I want to host events for kids who've aged out of the system, maybe something to remind them they're still seen." The woman paused. "That's beautiful," she said. "We've actually been praying for a place like that." By spring, the barn was alive again, not with lace and champagne, but with laughter. Raw, unfiltered, healing laughter. Kids painting signs, volunteers cooking meals, music spilling through the open doors. It wasn't the kind of beauty I'd planned years ago, but it was the kind that lasted. One afternoon, Lacey showed up again, this time with boxes of cookies and a shy smile. "Thought I could help," she said. And she did. Week after week, sometimes we barely talked. Sometimes we cried over old wounds. But slowly, something holy stitched us back together. Not flashy, not easy, just steady and real. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the fields, she looked at me and said, "I told Jared I want to annul the marriage." I looked up from the table I was sanding. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I realized I married someone to feel safe. But you taught me that love isn't about avoiding pain. It's about walking through it, even when it costs you." I swallowed hard. "That's not an easy truth." "No," she said softly, "but it's one you live." We stood there in the golden light, surrounded by the hum of crickets and laughter drifting from inside. And for the first time, I saw her, not as the girl who hurt me, but as the woman she was becoming. I smiled. "You know, Lacey, this barn, I built it to be a place for second chances. Guess it worked." She smiled back. "Yeah, for both of us." Months later, when we hosted our first community wedding for a couple who couldn't afford one, Lacey helped me decorate. The air smelled of fresh flowers and new beginnings. As the couple exchanged vows under the string lights, I felt something deep inside me settle. I wasn't erased. I was rewritten. And maybe that's what grace really is. Not forgetting the pain, but using it to build something beautiful.